Hello and thank you for joining us on Journalist Hangout on Sunday. I am Esther Omokwariola. Today on the program, shock, outrage greets a former Chief of Army Staff's remark that Nigeria can't defeat insurgency in 20 years. Governors reach consensus on ending ethnic clashes, agree on modern approaches to grazing. And later on the show, Nigeria plans to sell refineries, International Conference Center, and 34 others to finance the 2021 budget. I will be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Gani Kayode Balogun. Journalist Hangout starts now. Now, for more than a decade, Nigeria has contended with the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast with devastating impact on the polity. Hence, to say that the counter-insurgency war will last a little longer is gnawing. It was shocking and outrageous for Nigerians to hear from the immediate past Chief of Army Staff, retired Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, that the country can't defeat insurgency in another 20 years. Now, Buratai, who gave the damning verdict while being screened for an ambassadorial role by the Senate, also said it will require more than military approach to end insurgency in the most populous black country on earth. Let's hear from the General.
It is a complex operation. It has permeated the societies, both in Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger, and Chad. It is something that started more than 30, 40 years ago. They have penetrated the communities. They have won the communities to their side. That's why you see small hamlets, one or two people, still you see them hibernating or keeping Boko Haram in those locations. So it's a complex. So it requires a whole of government approach to deal with this. Military activities or military action is just one aspect. And this is one mistake we have been making, that only the military that is seen to solve this thing. Is not. Military cannot solve this action. In the first place, it wasn't the military that started it. There were political, social, economic factors that need to be addressed from the beginning. I don't need to take it back from independence or from the First Republic and so on. Development should be progressive. There should be roads everywhere. There should be employment. There should be hospitals, schools, all over. Until those things are penetrated, those locations are penetrated with road infrastructure, with rail, with amenities, hospitals, schools, and so on. Then we carry everybody along, and education is very fundamental. And unless these things are done, we will make, despite the diplomatic efforts, internally we must get it right, and that is the essence of this diplomacy. Foreign policy is a projection of domestic policy. So if you are able to domicile or curtail these things internally, that's why you project to other countries, and all our neighboring countries will be able to have a very robust defense as well as foreign policy action that will lead to the eradication of all this insecurity in the region. I'm quite passionate about it, and these are the realities, and the truth must be told, because this thing cannot end. I predicted sometimes that it may take another 20 years, and that is the truth. So unless these things are done comprehensively, deliberately, with serious intervention, we will still continue, this insecurity can continue to lead us.
Former Chief of Army Staff General Buratai speaking there. Indeed, this is a call for concern. Babajide, what do you make of the concerns raised by the former Chief of Army Staff that could lead, or what are the factors that could allow for insurgency to fester for another 20 years in the country?
Well, I hope and I pray that General Buratai's prediction does not come to pass, because if it comes to pass, it means that even the long insurgency that we always talk about, the Sri Lankan insurgency, will not have lasted as long as our own. That's what it means. I want to believe that the current leadership of the armed forces would continue to give their best, will continue to provide the right kind of leadership, provide the troops with what they need. The welfare of the troops should be paramount. The commander-in-chief should provide the troops with the weapons that they need. They don't have enough weapons, and that's why we are unable to crush these fellows. General Buratai spoke about social, political, economic problems worsening the insurgency. I agree with him, because when you go to the northeast, some of the most impoverished people in our country are in the northeast. So Boko Haram will not struggle to find foot soldiers. And I once went to Adamawa State and came back to say Boko Haram was giving soft loans to villagers in the area. Many people thought I raised a false alarm. They just said, oh, Babajide has come again. Until the army confirmed that in the Michika Madagali area, that Boko Haram was giving soft loans to young boys as a means of luring them to join it in fighting the Nigerian state. So where you offer foreign exchange, for example, to people who are so poor, you offer them good money, they will be ready to fight on your side. And we've seen this happen because Boko Haram has plenty of foreign fighters. People from Mali, people from Chad, those who had fought in the Chadian civil war.
In Libya.
They bring them and they come and fight on the side of Boko Haram. We've seen people, I remember, and I've talked about it a number of times here, during the battle for Giwa Barracks between Nigerian troops and Boko Haram. Some foreign currencies were seized at the scene of the fighting, which means they plan to share the foreign currency to the mercenaries that they hired.
After that battle.
And there were people, some arrests were made, and a lot of those people who were arrested could not speak a word of Nigerian language. That's to tell you that foreign fighters actually come in to assist Boko Haram in this war. So, and then of course poor people in our communities, they, apart from the people that they forced to join them, they also entice some of them with money, you know. So he has a point there, but I disagree that it will take us 20 years to defeat these people. If the military is provided with all of what is required, I believe that we can deal a decisive blow on this enemy. Look, as I always say it, all of the local governments that Boko Haram controlled were taken back before the 2015 election. Although a lot of people these days will say, oh, it was after this government came in. It's a lie. To confirm it, just Google when was Goza reclaimed. You see the date. Maybe in the course of this program we can do it, or GKB can do it right there. You see the date that Goza was reclaimed. You can Google when was Mafa reclaimed from Boko Haram. You see the date is there. All of these communities, we took them back because we took the right steps at that time. We used foreign fighters, military contractors, as they like to be called. They don't like to be called mercenaries. The military contractors, we used them. We brought in weapons. The T-72 Russian tanks, we brought them in. At this time, we should be investing on even T-90, because T-90 is the advanced grade of of that main battle tank. After all, we have good relationship with these people. Let's bring those game-changing weapons in and let us see whether it will take us 20 years. It cannot take us 20 years. But the way we are now, the way we are now, with the troops not provided with the equipment that they need, you find in some cases the Boko Haram will attack an army base. The whole of that army base, they have just 3 gun trucks. Boko Haram will come with 17 gun trucks and overrun the army base. It still happened in Marte. This Marte, some days back, they came with maximum force. They chased our soldiers away. It's just now that we are trying to take back the town. This is not fiction. This is reality. They took over the military base because they came with
superior firepower.
We came with much more than we had at that base. They will have done their due diligence. They want to attack an army base, maybe in Oyo. They know that in the army base you don't have more than so number of soldiers. They know that you don't have more than so number of gun trucks. They know that you probably have only 1 armor tank. Then they will come with far more superior weaponry. There's nothing that the soldiers can do. They will have to leave to fight another day. They will have to retreat to Dikwa. You know, so we can defeat the enemy. I don't think that it will take us 20 years, but the president must provide what the army needs. I know that the soldiers will not be able to open their mouths, their generals, and say, Mr. President, give us so number of main battle tanks. They won't be able to say that. Whatever they give them, they will close their mouths. They will assume that it is, and they will never complain to the press that they don't have enough. But the ordinary soldier who knows the situation of things will sometimes complain. That's why we've seen some videos of soldiers even coming out to say they don't have weapons. You know? And if you do your own investigation, you will discover that in some military bases, the troops do not have enough of what they should have. The moment we provide enough, these guys will be history, and with the cooperation of our neighbors. There's no way a ragtag army like Boko Haram will overwhelm soldiers from 4 different countries. I don't want to believe that that is possible. Chad, Cameroon, Niger, with Nigeria put together, we can't overrun Boko Haram. No, we don't need 20 years before that happens.
Indeed. Now, GKB, with the position made by BKO with regards to the fight against insurgency, and perhaps the only base way we can do this is if the government provides our military with the needed equipment, do you go with submission by the former Chief of Army Staff that a lot needs to be done apart from the military now, because we need socio-economic factors that need to be addressed if you're to tackle the Boko Haram crisis headlong?
Well, you have to look at it from 3 angles, really. The first one is economical, the one that you mentioned, when you are looking at the economic indices of those areas. But that pales in significance to the role that the army are playing when it comes to defense of our territorial integrity. What I expected from the retired general mainly is that the moment he resigned, in his handover notes, he should have solutions and problems that he has encountered forwarded to his successor in such a manner that the man can now go to war with a clean slate, knowing fully well these are the challenges that we have. But knowing the Nigerian military, especially the hierarchy of the Nigerian military, I can assure you that we are going to get more of the same going down the line. 20 years, of course, is a bit of a stretch. But you and I know that the reality is that we are ill-equipped to fight this war. We've been ill-equipped from day one, because you are not only fighting, it started out as a religious war, basically a sectarian war, and then took on a war that needs economic inputs. And now we are fighting wars that are being, that the fund required to buy equipment are being paid through banditry and kidnapping at a scale that has not been seen before in a long time. And we have bandits and terrorists in places that they can easily be identified, walk in, walk out, and nothing will happen to them. That to me is the face of the war that I don't think will end anytime soon. What is needed is been clearly stated. If, hypothetically, Boko Haram is holding across, and bandits, whatever names you want to call them, across the entire northern axis of our country. Let's say they are holding every state, about 7 of them. What do we need to defend and take back these states? Will have been the real need that the Army Command or the Military Command, we have to fall to the President. It's not enough to start a university in Biu, or to start a school, somewhere just to show that your job is not to take care of your people. That's the job of the governor. Your job as Army Chief was to provide the intelligence and the manpower required to safeguard our territorial integrity. This is a failure on his part. Because people get wisdom when they leave office. It's peculiar to Nigeria. All over the world, what people do is that they will go out and write a book to tell us the errors that happened when they were there. And then guide us towards not making the same mistake 20 years down the line. But in Nigeria, we seem to get more wisdom when we leave. And even former head of states seem to have all the answers a year after they've left office. And they've been in office for 8 years, some 11 years. And they will not do the very thing they are advising their successors to do when they have, even at that time, more leverage and less insurgency to deal with. So I think what the Army General is saying is cogent in the reason that failure of leadership across board, especially in the north, is what is fueling this insurgency. But what he has not done is the role and the part he too played as a major player in solving these problems that we face. Because everybody keep pushing the ball forward to the next. Nobody wants to be responsible for anything. And that to me is the danger that will not only make this war last longer, 20 years. But if nothing is done, I'm afraid, knowing the Nigerian mentality, people are going to copy that template and apply it all over the country.
Indeed. No, BKO, with what he has said so far, many are concerned that it will demoralize the troops who are already in the front lines battling this insurgency. So how is it possible for us to deal with this, complex situation, as it were, even though the government has failed its part in providing good leadership or providing governance, as it were, for residents, particularly in the north? How can the government and how can the military resolve this crisis that we have before us, when we know that with what he said so far, it will destabilize the soldiers who are in the battlefront fighting the insurgency?
Well, that's why I said the current leadership of the army, of the armed forces generally, must motivate their men, the officers and men, to see this as a winnable war, and as a war that will be won shortly. You see, some time ago, an apparently hired hand wrote something on social media that, Babajide, how come you don't talk when we are winning? He wanted me to join the chorus of people saying, oh, Boko Haram is about to fall. Boko Haram is losing the war. Boko Haram is about to fall. These people sit in their houses, within their rooms, and simply use what they are fed with. In my own case, I go to the area. I don't need anybody to tell me when the war is about to be won. It will be clear to me. You get the point that I'm making? At that point, we were making some gains. And the next thing, he said, Babajide, how come you are always quiet when we are winning? On occasions when I praise the army for the progress that they were making, they do not see it. All they want is for me to be praising the military every time. That's not how I was trained. Many Nigerians never knew anybody by the name General Adeosun. I was the one, letting the country know the sacrifices that he made and the progress that were made under his leadership in the Borno general area. When we reclaimed those communities before the election, he was the man in charge. They didn't know him. I was the one screaming his name. But people want me to praise the army when they don't even deserve to be praised. People want me to say, the Navy, they are fantastic, when there is no concrete evidence for that. People want me to announce that we are about to win the war when I cannot see that sign. They will see what looks like a sign that we are winning the war because they are simply fed with press releases and the rest. But a journalist of my standing must go beyond that. That's why George Bernard Shaw said, you say why, I say why not. You understand?
Right.
We are different from these people. And even me, I had made mistakes in the past when I felt, oh, given what is going on now, we will soon win the war. You know?
Right.
It was under this general. The former commander of Operation Lafia Dole, the one from the east.
Okay.
Under him, we captured Camp Zairo inside Sambisa forest. You know? And he even constructed roads into Sambisa forest. The former governor of Borno State came out and said, this guy is the best commander of Operation Lafia Dole ever. And at that point, I said, could it be, that's General Rogers Nicholas.
Nicholas Rogers.
Yes, from the southeast. I still believe that is the best commander of Operation Lafia Dole ever in terms of the achievements and even fatalities recorded under him. That's my opinion. At that point, a friend of mine, Diron Akindele, called me and said, Jide, you said it looks like we're about to win this war. I said, it looks like that. He said, now I believe that we're about to win. But of course, we didn't win.
Other factors.
Yeah, we are still here years after. That is why sometimes the information that you get from the war zone, especially from the military, you've got to bounce that against other information from other sources before you can conclude that we're about to win. You cannot conclude that we're about to win simply by seeing some pictures. At that time when you are seeing some pictures, we are probably suffering some setbacks in another sector of the world. This is the thing. We could actually be overrunning Shekau's farm inside Sambisa and be losing troops elsewhere. We could be losing troops in Marte. We could be losing troops in Dikwa. We could be losing troops elsewhere in Borno North. While overrunning Shekau's farm, you cannot, on account of some isolated incidents, conclude that we are about to win.
Right.
I have learned my lessons. So if anyone likes, let them write that, oh, Jide doesn't talk when we are about to win. Okay, that person who wrote that back then, have we now won? He wrote it early last year, I think around April. Have we won now?
A year later.
A year later. So who now looks stupid between us? Between the man who refused to say a word because he was not convinced that we were about to win, and you who concluded that we were about to win because you were hired to say so. So this is the thing. What the general has said can demoralize many people, not just soldiers.
Right.
But we must realize that he has some reasons. There are things that he knows that the rest of us don't know. If you are saying that victory is still far away, that means even when you were chief of army staff, you knew that victory was still far away. But you simply made it look like victory was close because that was what Nigerians wanted to hear, or that was what the CNC wanted to hear. That is not the right way to go. Sometimes the people need to know the truth. Yes, he's told us the truth now. Although it's his timeline that I disagree with. I disagree that it will take 20 years. I believe that there are things we can do, that we can win this war militarily before we spend all of those years. But one fact is clear. General Buratai has now made it clear to us that, look, don't jubilate yet.
Right.
This war
is not a sprint.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. This war is not about to be won. So I appreciate him for telling us the truth. If it was me that's so, they will say, oh, he's always promoting Shekau. He's always, there's no funny thing that they have not said. But it's the general himself who has seen the war, who has gone to the war front with all his experience, who is saying that. So we have to take what he has said seriously, but we should not allow ourselves to be demoralized.
Indeed. So GKB, from what he said so far, definitely we have a lot to do, and not only us, the government as well has a role to play. But let's start with what the COS, the Chief of Army Staff, former Chief of Army Staff said. This thing didn't start today. It started about 30, 40 years ago. So my question is, whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the government? Is it the fault of the people? How were we not able to see the handwriting on the wall at the time when it started?
Well, I would not, 1980 will be when? That was 40 years ago.
1970. 1980 be 40 years ago.
1980 was the first time that we had an insurgency. Katsina people, first time people would take on the Nigerian states at such massive level that they cannot run away. So if he's referring to that, then of course it's correct that we've been at it for 40 years. But if you remember that those who attacked the former Emir of Kano, Alhaji Adobayero,
yes,
the man himself said, these are not Nigerians. And we are talking about almost 10, 15 years ago. That means we've been in the middle of a low-scale war for a long time. But like we normally do, either as analysts or as people in government, the first thing we do is dive into the sand to hide our head. And the second one is to look for whose fault it is. Because it doesn't matter whether we are it is our table or not, it must be somebody else's fault. So on those two realities, we have to have a change of mindset.
Right.
That the war of the long one was confirmed, not by Buratai, but by happening in Niger State in the last 1 week. We've realized the fact that these people have realized the power that they have over the Nigerian states. And they are now going to turn it into a full-scale business. And I keep wondering at which point, as they said, we'll say, no more. It ends here, as they say in American movies. But we are not there yet. Because, like Gideon said, the parameters to be used to judge whether we are winning, almost winning, nearly winning, technically winning, or we are waiting for VAR to tell us we are winning, is the fact that we have to put in things in place to know that our soldiers, because they are the best in the world. Don't forget, we've stopped wars, we stopped coups in the West African region for years. In fact, there was a time, if you remember, that the first time we sent our ship, NNS Apa, to Liberia, it was the first time they had seen a ship captained by black people.
All right, let me hold your thoughts on this now. We have now a home security analyst joining us via Skype to discuss this crucial matter before us. Good to have you on the show this evening, Mr. Onai Homo. So, but you know, with the comments made by the former Chief of Army Staff, one is beginning to wonder, will it really take Nigeria 20 years to, you know, deal with this insurgency? What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much for having me, ma'am. I don't think I agree with the former COAS's assessment. I know that insurgency takes time to defeat, but it depends on your battle plan, what you are bringing to the battlefield. For example, what we have right now is still very limited understanding of the problem at hand. Now, we have a very great resource in Nigeria who we are not utilizing in the person of Babajide Otitoju, who is there with you in the studio. This guy, perhaps next to myself, he knows the most about Boko Haram in this country. And this is somebody who should be right now in Abuja advising the COAS, the CDS, and the NSA, and in fact even Mr. President himself, on what needs to happen. I think what they don't understand is that first you must have a good understanding of a problem before you can solve it. It's not just about how many guns and how many bullets you can carry to the field, or how many gun trucks and armored tanks, or even how many troops you can take out there. It's also about understanding the dynamics of the conflict. And that, I am afraid, is not very well understood, even at this time. Even till today, 12 years on, we are still, kind of doing Babiala. We are still walking with our eyes closed, and we're trying to find our way around it. And it's really shameful. And I think the reason for this is because there's no accountability. Nobody is asking anybody to pay a price for the lives that are lost, for the property destroyed. Nigeria is such a country where when things are destroyed, we just say, oh, okay, let's just rebuild it. We won't say, but why was it destroyed? Right. Such that we can learn some organic lessons and then, become better informed. But anyway, I think one of the best things, they should fire most of those advisors they have and put Babajide there such that he can tell them really what is happening. No, I'm serious. I'm dead serious. If you want to be doing this 25 years, we'll be talking about it. We'll be old men still talking about it. But if we want this conflict to end in the next 5 years, which is probably how long it's going to take to bring it to an end, you need to get some very well-informed people in there such that they can tell you what needs to happen. The military strategy is a little part of it, a very small part of it. And I'm not talking about building what they keep saying, we need to give jobs. Didn't you know that you needed to give jobs? What have been happening to all the budgetary allocations to those states all these years? So those ones are all there. Those are structural problems of bad governance that we have. And those are consequences we'll deal with. But right now, there's an insurgency. There's an invasion, in fact, of this country. I'm talking about the other part, that is the Northwest. That's ongoing, and we are there clapping for it. Instead of looking at it now, in fact, even the Sultan has spoken. He said that Boko Haram has metastasized into, into the banditry. Well, I guess people have finally heard what Babajide and I have been saying for many years, and thank God. So we hope that it will be taken seriously at this time.
Indeed, with the hope that you have put so far on IHOMUD, someone would say perhaps the statement credited to the former chief of have damning implications to the polity. But, Babajide, what are your thoughts on the likely implications of this? Because if, for instance, he has given us what it would take for us to get insurgency out of this country
5 years ago,
what are the implications of this revelation?
I think even before he spoke, many people were already convinced that this war is not as easy as people in government try to portray it.
Not as straightforward, yeah.
All the talk about technical defeat, they go after soft targets and all that. Military bases are not soft targets. We can't count how many times Boko Haram overrun military bases, including super camps, so-called super camps, overrun by the army and by Boko Haram, forcing troops to take refuge in a nearby town. So if the president and other people underrated this enemy, what the former chief of army staff has said should nudge everyone back to reality that this enemy is not as weak as we think he is. And Boko Haram fighters are ready to die. They may be barefooted, but they are ready to die. You can't judge them by what they put on. They are ready to die because they believe that once they die, they are going to Al-Jannah. I wonder who has been there and back to tell them that it is people like them that are needed there. But that's the way they are thinking. I remember the president say, how are the mighty falling? That was before the election in 2015, that we had to go and get Chadians to assist us.
Military contractors.
But today, yes, but today, have we not brought Chadians in? Even Cameroonian troops have joined us in Bama in trying to overrun the enemy.
Even in the Chad.
What are we talking about? Even under his presidency, Chadian troops have entered Nigerian territory in the past and fought against the enemy. So when I heard that at that time, I said, Kai, this man is underrating these people.
You've been out of power for so long.
You cannot simply underrate an enemy that you have not engaged.
Based on face value.
Based on the face value. Now we are seeing clearly that, look, there's international dimension to this thing, and this enemy is not as weak as we think he is. This enemy is being bankrolled by an international terrorist group like ISIS. They provide the funds for them, they help them with tactics and all that. So that's why it will appear that no matter how we kill them, they don't appear to be ending. And our porous borders allow them to bring in fighters from Mali to Niger Republic. Niger Republic, I'm afraid to say, is more or less a failed state. They come into our country.
Even Mali, southern Mali.
That's what I'm saying. They come in through Niger Republic, from Mali to Niger Republic and into our country.
Even through
Libya too. They can come in, they enter from Libya, they get into Chad. From Chad, they go to Niger Republic and then come into our country. That's how they bring in some of their weapons. You know? Yeah. And where you see Boko Haram consistently fighting against our troops at a particular location, you will know that it is their source for weaponry and they don't want you to stay there. We've seen them do that repeatedly, especially Northern Borno. There are places where they made sure they frustrated us. Then we decided to close the army bases in some of those places because of consistent attacks.
All right, let's quickly get your thoughts on Onaihomo, still on this same matter. Ona, what can we do now to win this insurgency less than 20 years, as predicted by the former Chief of Army Staff?
Let's go.
Well, I don't know. I think there are many things in my book called Boko Haram Security Considerations of an Insurgency. First of all, chapter 15, I looked at what is going to help us win this war. And I talked about a risk mapping model or a risk mapping methodology whereby we can look at,
Okay, it seems they're having a bit of challenge there with Onaihomo. When we have a better audio quality, we will continue with that if at all time permits. So GKB, let's have your thoughts. What can we do to win the war against insurgency less than 20 years?
Well, I think everything is on the table now. And first, the government will have to accept that this is a war, not an insurgency, not a battle somewhere, that we're in the middle of a full-scale war. And once you've accepted that, because we all know that trauma has 5 stages. Acceptance is the first stage. Then after that, we can now negotiate with ourselves how to fight this war. So far, the Nigerian government has not accepted that we have a war. They are still calling it many other names: banditry, thuggery, ethnic champions, Boko Haram. But what we have is a war. Islamic State, West Africa, is the mother lode of Boko Haram. And they are splitting into many groups. And they are splitting into many groups across the Sahara region. And Nigeria seems to be the home base, the big prize for this. So the more they lose ground in Europe and in Middle East, the more we see more kidnapping, more brazen acts of infantry in the Nigerian states. And that to me is a sign that while we are winning some areas, we are losing in some. For example, when you look at the reality that we just mentioned, if they are getting their money and their funds from somewhere, and that place is drying up, and the place is drying up, that means automatically that they must look for sources of funds elsewhere.
Right.
And it seems that they've targeted Nigerian states as the source of that fund. We are not looking at it from that angle. We are still pretending that we are fighting some
all of the oil feeds that they took over in Iraq, you know, in Kirkuk and other places. Yes, they've taken them back from them.
So they must.
So they've lost money, and at that time they were making money from crude oil.
Legal sales.
Crude oil, yes, illegal sales of crude oil to fund their the insurgency. Well, now they've lost ground. And in fact, Boko Haram or ISWAP is like one of their favorite sons now. So they are giving them attention, giving them the resources that they need.
But I think they've also given them their freedom.
Keep them going.
They also give them their freedom. That's why they are now sourcing.
All right, I understand we also have another analyst joining us via Skype, Group Captain Sadiq. Good to have you on the program. So let's have your thoughts on the position made forward by the former Chief of Army Staff. Do you think it will take Nigeria 20 years to deal with this insurgency, and how can we perhaps bring it to be less than the time predicted? Hello, Group Captain Sadiq, can you hear me? Okay, seems it's yet to be, we're yet to have a contact with our resource person. As soon as we do that, perhaps we will come on to the next segment of the show. Still ahead, a wise crack goes thus. Every matter has two handles. Now, this teaches us that there is no one way of thrashing problems. Amid rising ethnic tension in Nigeria, especially the vexed issue of incessant farmers and herders clashes, the Nigerian Governors Forum adopted some measures to calm the situation. And one of these is that open grazing is out of tune with modern realities, hence the need for the country to adopt new approaches to herding like ranching. Now, this has been the position of Governor Abdullahi Ganduje of Kano State, who said it is time Nigeria put a stop to the movement of cattle from the north to the south. Let's share his comments with you.
The second category of herdsmen in Nigeria. Can you change the herdsmanship from tradition to commercial nature? That issue must be discussed, and that could be discussed when we have adequate data. The federal government is assisting farmers. The federal government also should assist herdsmen so that they graduate into modern animal husbandry. That is the crux of the matter. If they continue like this, what happens to their education? No religious education, no Western education. It is a matter of an animal is rearing animal. That's the fact of it. Somebody with no Western education, somebody with no religious education, somebody who cannot read and write, and he is grown up. Nigeria of today, you can call him an animal, and he is pursuing animals. That is an issue that we must look into.
Well, that's Kano State Governor Abdullahi Ganduje giving his thoughts on how to deal with the farmers' herders crisis in the country of recent. So, Babajide, he is calling for the adoption of ranching system in Nigeria, in northern Nigeria particularly. But how feasible is that, knowing that majority of the people who are cattle herders believe they are known to move from state to state, community to community, and so practicing ranching is like a tall order?
No, it's anything new. It will take a mighty effort to get Nigerians to take it on board. Government has got to make the efforts. Government has got to create the environment that will make the headsmen realize that their current mode of doing that business is antiquated. There's nowhere in the world where people simply roam with cattle for over 1,000 kilometers. You know, what the governor is saying is what we should sit down and see how we can implement. And we have the resources to make this happen. Already, I have seen evidence that even some states are moving in that direction. In Sokoto, they are moving in that direction. In Zamfara, the governor, Bello Muhammad Mutawale, is building a gigantic ranch. The Ruga scheme, that's another name for it. And if only we can convince the current generation of herders that, look, as the governor said, let us move from traditional to commercial. You can actually make more money when you put your cattle in one place. They will be bigger, they will be fatter and healthier. Even you, that you are having to trek hundreds of kilometers,
You'll be healthier.
you know, you will be healthier because you do not need to suffer yourself that much. And you cannot say that you are more Fulani than Ganduje. He said he even learned how to speak Hausa when he got to primary school. He's a full-blooded Fulani man. You know, people are seeing, and I'm happy that even the governors now, the governors have realized that, look, this is the way to go. When headers move, because it's his own means of livelihood that you have destroyed. Unfortunately too, the old grazing routes have been largely violated. People have even sold some of those grazing routes to their friends. The former emir of Kano, Sanusi, alluded to that you are creating a crisis without knowing that you are creating it. You sold grazing routes to your friends. Now these people have nowhere to go. So if you have a big ranch somewhere, that ranch will have veterinary doctors that can look after the cattle. It will have access, it will have water in abundance. Because sometimes these people move dozens of kilometers just in search of water. You know? It will have water right there in the ranch. It will also have roads and then houses built for those farmers. And of course, they can also do artificial insemination right there. All the modern methods that can improve the business, because we should call it business now. All the modern methods will be in place. And then critically, we will be able to solve the security problem, which is the farmer header crisis. We will be able to solve it. It's happening in Taraba, it's happening in Adama, so many places. It's not in the southwest alone that we have this. In some of those states, Adama and the rest of them, we've had stories of farmers and herdsmen clashing. And it's because farmlands get violated. So the point that one is making is, if you have those ranches, then issues of even cattle rustling will be eliminated, because you can't rustle cattle because the ranch itself will be protected either by soldiers or policemen well armed. You know, unlike if you are roaming freely on your own, you have to engage those cattle thieves on your own, and in most cases these people lose their cattle. So I think that what the governor has said has to be taken seriously, and it's a good thing that the Nigerian Governors Forum has also agreed that modern methods should be adopted. So this is the way to go. Now both the federal and state governments have to come up with a structure and maybe timeline. We want to go this route. What are the baby steps that we must take, and how long should we give ourselves to be able to fully implement this? But this is the future.
Indeed.
And we must realize that countries like the US, Florida, state in the US, and other places where you see very fat bulls, that's what they do.
Practice. Indeed, quite a position there from our own BKO. But you know, GKB, with what the Kano State Governor has pointed out, commercialization should be the practice of, you know, commercialization of ranching, as in, it's better this way of cattle business, apologies, than than the traditional system of you know, moving cattle from one community to another. But what business environment do you think the government needs to do now to ensure that this system of ranching is, fully practiced, is adopted, is implemented, is not just paid lip service to? What can we do? What can the government do to ensure this is followed to the letter? Well,
in the first place, ranching is not new. So I keep hearing that all over the place. Ranching has been around for about 300 years. Actually, the ranch came from the word rancho in Spain, basically because when there are not of space for farmers, they have to keep the cattle away. It's not even new in Nigeria. During the Awolowo years, there are about 7 ranches in Western Nigeria. Biggest one being at Fashola in Oyo. And what we now call abattoir was basically the dairy farm that supplied milk to Lagos. In the early 60s, but the military did their magic and destroyed everything when they came. So we are not talking about something that's not been done in Africa before. So that's the fear I have, that people have taken something that's purely business and cloak it in tradition and use that as an excuse to cause mayhem. That's the first thing we have to accept. It's been done here before. Yes. The entire Okoba, that's what it means. King's Farm. That's the entire thing. And when we were young, you have to go to Okoba to get fresh milk every day. It's available. It's now estates, of course. But back then, even up to about 2 years ago, you can't walk past that place. If you are a veterinarian in Nigeria and you don't have an office in Okoba, then you are not a true vet. So that's what we need to do. Number 2, I agree with the governor totally. Political will is what is lacking. Yes. That's all that is lacking as far as we are concerned. Once we muster the political will to make this work, every other thing will fall in place. But not the Nigerian system. If this thing should go down in 3, 4, 5 months, people just ignore it and move on to the system until the next crisis comes on board. That is my fear. It's not for lack of ideas. We have some of the best ideas. I've seen with my own eyes plans by what was NEPA to build new towns as far back as 1971. It was not implemented. It's not for lack of ideas. It's not for lack of plans. It's the willpower to do the right thing.
Indeed. Willpower is always the issue here. Okay, we understand we have Salim Omale joining us now to have his thoughts on this. So how do you think the solutions proffered by the Nigerian Governors Forum can be adopted, to ensure that it is sustainable? It is not just, adopted today and then tomorrow thrown into the trash can. How can we ensure that this is sustainable?
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for bringing this topical issue on this very popular platform where so many policymakers and a wide range of Nigerians listen, and which contribute significantly in driving understanding among many Nigerians. First of all, we all need to acknowledge that contrary to many of the views that are being expressed, livestock production is very important to the economy of Nigeria, and it has those potentials to address many of the issues of food insecurity in this country and to contribute to the social and economic development of our nation. Again, it is a fact that just like many other facets of the Nigerian economy, the traditional livestock production system, which involves where animals roam from one place to another in search of pasture or feeds and water, is highly undeveloped. And again, with rising populations, changing climates, the quest for increased food security, and contestations which may not necessarily arise out of the activity of grazing per se, but also the dynamics of the Nigerian politics has made it necessary to transform and continuously improve this traditional system of production. And again, it's not only, I keep saying this, that it is not only traditional livestock farming that is challenged, but also traditional farming methods are also challenged. And we need to look at this collectively and dispassionately without adding any extra sentiments to it. The same way the vast majority of the traditional cattle rearers move with their animals is the same way majority of our farmers also use local tools and local equipment, which is contributing to the high rate of poverty among rural farming communities in the country. So what is the way forward for the livestock system? What is the way forward for the traditional pastoral system? First of all, the production is based on indigenous knowledge and very little application of modern technology, modern skills, and modern tools. With this, I think the first and foremost is to have a professional assessment of this sector. And that means that professionals in the veterinary services, in the animal production services, in the range management services have to be drawn on board. And they have to lead the debate, they have to lead the strategies that will transform this traditional system of production. And I keep repeating that the voices of these professionals is suppressed, and we are not seeing them actively participating and leading in finding solutions to these problems. So it is a development issue, it's an issue of production. So for me, I totally agree with the fact that in the long run, having ranches, for which many people don't even understand, they are just enclosures or defined land areas where cattle are being provided with feeds. That is just simply a ranch. Yes. So it could be any land area once it is dedicated for the production of animals, where animals graze and have their feeds and water. That is a ranch. But there are different types of ranches, and that is what many Nigerians do not understand. When we say a ranch, especially if it is somebody from the US, from maybe Mexico and Australia, a ranch is a very large chunk of area where animals are grazed freely within that defined enclosure. So in Nigeria, we have acute land scarcity, and those sort of extensive ranch systems may not be functionally possible in the long run. So what we need is to develop what we call the semi-intensive and intensive livestock farming systems that are generally practiced in areas with high population densities like Western Europe and some other countries where high level of production and application of technology is adapted. So in the long run, that is the way out for Nigeria. How do we get there? First of all, we need to keep aside the politics. We need to keep aside the differences that are promoting some of these negative behaviors and tendencies among all the groups. So fundamentally, let's work with farming and pastoral communities wherever they are and provide them with the requisite knowledge and skills to improve the per unit productivity of the land. Secondly, let us work with the pastoral groups to educate and enlighten them on the realities of the Nigerian situation, that no longer do we have enough grazing areas, no longer do we have enough forage. So they have to now begin to invest in the production of feeds resources for their animals. Once we are able to reach these two, within a short period of time, not ranging more than 1 year, we then begin to work with community institutions, with farming communities, with pastoral communities in those areas where pastoralists exist in large numbers. And we begin to work out mechanisms by which both farmers and pastoralists can use the same piece of land amicably and peacefully to develop that piece of land and increase the productivity of that through the cooperative use of resources. Again, there are large holding, livestock holding families who are largely the migratory ones. For those groups of people, we need to give them the capacity, organize the few existing grazing reserves, and support them with the necessary infrastructure and skills and capacity for them to begin to concentrate around those areas for both wet and dry season grazing. And
Mamale, we need to go on a very quick break. We will come back to hear all that you have to tell us with regards to this issue. Let's quickly bring you an update on the latest news we can find on the military aircraft King Air 350 that crashed short of Abuja runway a few hours ago. The Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, has confirmed that the plane crashed 15 minutes after takeoff with 6 persons on board the aircraft and presumed dead. Well, the aircraft developed engine failure at about 10:39 a.m. before it eventually crashed. We understand the plane had been used by the security and intelligence agencies on reconnaissance missions over Sambisa and many areas where insurgents have posed a threat. Well, the Accident Investigation Bureau has declined to comment on the cause of the plane crash since the aircraft belongs to the military. According to Mr. Sirika, the crash appears to be fatal, but he urged Nigerians to be calm. Recall that the 2 chambers of the National Assembly had decried the state of the aviation sector, warning that disaster looms without adequate funding. Well, let's quickly go on a short break. We'll have more discussions on Journalist Hangout. Stay with us.